Okay, and let me share my screen for the outline. Okay, so um, instead of doing our typical, hey, what did we cover yesterday, we're going to do a breakdown of what did we cover last week? What are all the things that we learned? What was the homework assignment like? All of that kind of stuff. Then we're going to get our first HTML file started in VS Code and pop it open in the browser. That may be reminiscent of the file exercise as part of the admissions process, but we're going to start leaning into all of the prep work that you did in Code Academy, right? So we're going to start using HTML tags, and all we're going to do today is make a really ugly website. From there, we're going to start talking about HTML attributes, CSS, cascading style sheets, 3 different ways of doing them, inlining them using a style tag, and then externally linking to it. We're going to talk a little bit about what CSS selectors are and CSS properties. We're going to go over the CSS box model, and then we have several free code camp homework assignments. Now, you'll note that there are a lot of exercises in them, probably close to 100 all totaled up. Do not feel like you need to get them all done tomorrow, right? The point of that is to be a recap on class. We should be covering most of them today, but the free code camp curriculum is great because they will touch on things that I forgot about and also kind of teach you through it. So what you may find is after class tonight, you get in there and you're like, oh, we did all of this in class. This is great. And you fly through them. Or you may find you get in there and you're like, oh, this is a really good review. Let me go read that paragraph at the top of the exercise before I dive into that. So there is no extra credit if you get all of these assignments done tonight, or if you wait until Sunday to get them done. Just keep in mind that there are a lot of them, but you will find that some of them you'll be able to get through in like 2 or 3 minutes. Some of them might take you a little longer, and it is completely okay to get stuck on them, right? So if you are stuck somewhere and you're like, I just can't get this last green check mark, take a screenshot of your browser so I know what problem you're working on and where you're stuck and what code you've tried, and throw it in the CIC students channel. And the reason we want to throw it in there is because if you're stuck on it, chances are another student also got stuck on it. So if you get through all of them, you're working on them on Sunday, you get them all finished, and they're like that 1 or 2 that you can't get, do not worry, submit the assignment anyway. It is not a big deal if you don't get all of them complete. So just get through as many as you can and pay attention to the assignments. For example, I'm requesting that you get all 28 assignments done here. In this screenshot, I've only done 2 of them, but this one says get all 28 done, as opposed to the visual design one that says, hey, complete the first 32, right? So there are 52 in this, but just going up to creating a texture is enough. If you would like to keep going in Free Code Camp, it is a great resource, and finishing out this entire front-end module can be a great thing to add to your resume. They say it takes about 300 hours to do it, but once we start chugging up speed, you're going to find we're covering a lot of the concepts in class that you can continue working on in Free Code Camp. So I would encourage you to continue the Free Code Camp entire front end, what do they call it? The responsive web design course. But I would say, for assignments, we're only assigning a couple, or a little under 100 of the probably 300 exercises in Free Code Camp. So you don't have to get them all done. If you get stuck on one, that's completely fine. There are a lot of little pieces going on here, but feel free to reach out for help, especially if it's on an assigned one that you get stuck on. Okay, that's what I got for homework review. I can now cross that off the list. Assignments are in here. These are the 3 Free Code Camp. If you ever see FCC, that is not the Federal Communications Commission. We are talking about Free Code Camp. And then the homework assignment for tonight is just going to be what you guys are playing along with me, right? So as we create our HTML page today throughout class, you're going to start using these HTML attributes and actually making something of it. It is totally fine to not follow along with me. If you're like, whoa, I want to take all of this information in, and then later tonight or tomorrow, I want to go in and actually practice it, that is completely fine. If you would like to code along with me, I will be taking breaks all throughout class to see everyone catch up. We're actually going to be using a Zoom poll, and we're going to leave that poll open, and people can work on it, and then they can vote. Hey, I'm not really following along. I'm ready to move on whenever you are. Or the other vote will say, hey, I'm ready to go. I'm caught up. I got it working just like yours does. For the beginning couple weeks, that may seem like overkill, but as we get into more advanced concepts, it's going to be really important to gauge kind of where the whole class is at. And while I can normally tell based off of people's videos being on, the polls is just a very explicit way to say, like, hey, I'm ready to move on, or I need a little bit more time. So when those polls do come up, if you are trying to get it to work, just don't vote on the poll until you are ready to move on. But that will be a little bit more clear once I kick off the poll. Okay, that's all of my logistical stuff. We are going to see how first week of virtual class goes. Fortunately, cohort 1 was all in person and cohort 2 was all virtual, so we've got a lot of the kinks worked out. However, there's always some interesting headaches that come up. Thank you all for responding to the venue survey poll. That is super helpful for us. The general vibe that we got was Common Space is working out pretty well for everyone, and other than, first day hiccups, we should be in a pretty good spot. We actually have a conference room system coming in for next week's classes that will make the microphones even better to make it easier to hear for me and if you are remote. But okay, that is all of my updates. Who wants to kick us off on what we covered last week? What was kind of exciting to learn last week? What were you excited to get the foundation laid on? What did you hate about last week? Someone just vibe in with me on what was last week.
Wireframes.
Wireframes. What did you learn about wireframes?
Just kind of getting familiar with the diagrams net or draw IO, I think it was called. There's like two names for it. But yeah, that was actually really cool. I didn't know that was like a part of the process when it came to like starting a project or whatever, or something as simple as like a portfolio page. So yeah, it's
Absolutely.
something new.
Yeah, and getting hooked into that software development life cycle, right? Of coding is not just about sitting down and popping open your text editor. There's a lot of project management and planning and research that goes into all of that, right? So not just understanding requirements, but then also connecting into breaking down those requirements into what we call user stories, or what we call in Trello those cards. And then, doing the whole planning process, doing the whole designing process well before we get to any of the coding itself. And so diagrams.net used to be called draw.io, which is, you'll still see that in a couple places, will actually come back later in the curriculum when we get into entity relationship diagrams, or ERDs, which is how we design the database. So we'll be using ERDs built in draw.io to make sure we understand, hey, it's not just the code and the front end that we need to plan out, it's also the back end and how the database is all going to work. And so we'll be using diagrams.net to plan for all of that as well. What else did we cover last week?
Mockups and prototypes.
Yeah, so talk to me about what mockups and prototypes, what's the difference between a mockup, a prototype, and a wireframe?
You want me to answer the same that you want me to answer?
Sure, go for it.
Okay, well, a wireframe is like I would consider it as more like a sketch or and then your mock-up is like um just a little bit after that. So not quite the full out, whole website code and everything. It would just be like right just before that, like, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so the way I would describe it, yeah, is a wireframe is just what it sounds like, right? It looks like an outline. It doesn't have any content in it. It's really just to figure out layout and making sure that you've got all the requirements from your phase before that in the software development lifecycle incorporated into the wireframe, right? So, hey, can I sit down and understand how this app is going to be laid out and the different screens of the app based off of the wireframe? From there, we move into mockups, which are sometimes called pixel perfect mockups, and that is basically the designer getting involved and saying, hey, this is how the app should look. Here are the colors, here are the images that should show up in it, here are what the buttons should look like. We should basically be able to look at this mockup and say, hey, as soon as the developers are done with this is exactly what that app is going to look like. And then we move into that final stage, which is the prototype, right? And the prototype is actually making the mockups interactive. That's what's adding in links. That's making it so we may be able to scroll on different pages. It's not actually building it out in the code. It's not saving any data, but it's at least something we can click through and kind of feel like a prototype of the app, right? What is this going to feel like as an end user? And then, of course, the last step after that is going to be actually building out the code, making it work, getting full stack involved, getting the database involved, all of that. And then I guess we also have quality assurance and deployment, and that whole thing kind of sums up most of the software development lifecycle. So you will come into some companies and they will say, we don't wireframe. We just go to our designers, give them the requirements, and they make up mockups right from the beginning. You will find some companies will do mockups and prototypes, but won't do wireframes. You'll see some companies do wireframes and then weirdly make the wireframe interactive. Or have something in between, right? So it's not a guaranteed that every company or every team that you work with is going to go through wireframe mockup prototype, but there are definitely some problems that you can run into if you don't complete steps in that process, right? It's really important, even as a software developer, if you aren't getting the mockups and you're being handed a requirements doc, to do that planning now before you get into the code, because once you get into the code, making changes are much harder, as is kind of figuring out where everything's supposed to go. So part of engineering is, and software engineering as a whole, is breaking down complex problems. And not only do you have to be good at doing that as an engineer in code, you also have to be really good at doing that in terms of project planning and project management. Awesome. Anything else from last week that you found interesting, that you found frustrating?
I appreciate that you helped us with the time management software. Was it Trello?
Yes.
Learning that was interesting. Is it pronounced Kanban method or
Kanban?
Kanban method. I thought that was really good takeaway, because it's just going to lead us right into when we're in the workforce, having a proper workflow and knowing how to manage our time. I thought that was just a perfect tool to use going forward.
Absolutely. And while I won't push on it as a requirement, it will definitely make one-on-ones easier if you have a system in place. It doesn't have to necessarily be Trello, doesn't necessarily have to be Kanban, but some overall, like, hey, we've got a lot of moving parts in this curriculum, right? And a lot to learn. So how do I keep track of all of that? And everyone has different systems, and that's okay, right? Sometimes you come into a team and they say, we use Trello, you have to use Trello. And sometimes that's a requirement of the job. Other times they'll say, we don't really have a system in place. We just let everyone self-organize. And so Trello is a great tool and a free tool up to a certain level of complexity. But there are a lot of great options out there. So just getting yourself set up now as you start to feel things ramp up and get more complex and involve more of your time. Just keep in the back of your head that sometimes the best way to get out of stress is not by just doing all the work, it's by organizing the work. And that takes me to a quote that Caitlin inspired today. I said, well organized often gives the illusion of well prepared. right? Which is organization and preparedness are not always the same thing, right? But if you can stay on top of your organization, all of a sudden you're going to find everything that you need to prepare for is just so much easier, right? And so just keep that in the back of your head whenever you're feeling stressed, whenever you feel like you're stuck on a problem. Sometimes it's helpful to take a step back and realize what you've gotten done, where the progress of everything is, what you have remaining to do, and just kind of keep that all in perspective, because understanding sometimes when you're stuck at that one tree in the forest, sometimes taking a step back and looking at the whole forest can actually help you understand what's going on with that one tree, right? So just something to keep in mind there. Anything else from last week in order to summarize?
We talked about imposter syndrome.
Yes, imposter syndrome, super good one to touch on, and you may start to feel it for the first time in today's class, right? When we're moving through HTML for the first time, and you're going, oh my god, how is Max writing all of those tags? I'm never going to remember them all. I can't keep up. That is okay. That is normal, right? Things will get more technical from here, but also we've got all of these resources in place to make sure that you get unstuck, right? And so imposter syndrome is a very normal thing. After 10 years of professional software development, sometimes I get handed a task where I'm like, why did that take me all day to do it? A great example of that was we just built a feature into our app where we had to upload files, right? And we had to store them up in the cloud and then be able to access them. And that feature took me a couple hours, and I was working with another senior dev to get it done. And at the end of it, I went, man, I can't believe that took me that long. You know, like I've done this before. I should be able to do this faster. And I voiced those concerns to the developer I was working on it with, and he went, I felt the same way. It's not just me, you know? Like sometimes it's important to realize you accomplish something, you get it done, and that imposter syndrome of I can't do it, I just can't do it is something that is natural for us all to feel, right? When we call it a syndrome, it makes it sound like it's a disease, but that's not the case. It's just human nature to feel defeated, to sometimes feel like we're all in competition. And so remember, we're all learning this together, right? And so always feel free to reach out if you're feeling that way. Super excited to start one-on-ones. I know several of you have scheduled them. Hopefully all of you, as that was a homework assignment for last week. But hopefully those one-on-ones will get you to the place of realizing, hey, it's normal to get stuck here. We're learning really technical concepts, and that's okay. Anything else summarizing from last week? Okie doke. So let's dive in to coding this week. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and get situated here. If I'm looking down, I've got my laptop right in front of me and you guys up on this monitor. So I apologize. It's not that I need to share the smaller screen so you guys aren't overwhelmed with a 27-inch monitor, but the only way I can really do that is by looking down at my smaller monitor, so I apologize for the lack of eye contact. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share that screen, and I'm going to pop open VS Code. If you don't have VS Code in your dock, you can go to Finder and go to Applications over on the side, and then find VS Code and pop that open, and it should look something like this. So I'm going to close the release notes. If your release notes didn't pop open, that's fine, and you should have a getting started. Did everyone get a chance to install VS Code? Does anyone need me to walk through the VS Code install steps?
I actually have to install it. I thought I had, but I don't see it, so.
No problem. So all you're going to do is if you pop open a web browser and you just do a search for VS Code, it should be the first link here or this download link. And then you're going to grab the one that says Apple Silicon. super important that you grab that one in particular. I think this one will take you to the same link, but the Apple Silicon link is the one that you want to download. So if you click on that, it should start your download. It will probably take a minute or two. It will open something like your downloads folder up, and then all you need to do is take this here and drag it to your applications folder. Super important that it ends up in your applications folder and not just in your downloads, because launching it from your downloads is actually going to cause headaches, right? So the only way to actually get it installed is to drop it in your applications. And then I got a little pop-up because I already have it installed. But just make sure that VS Code is in your applications folder and not just in your downloads.
Okay, it's downloading now. Thank you.
Awesome. Give everyone just a minute to catch up there. I'm going to make my VS Code bigger here, and I'm going to, you don't have to follow me here. I just want to make sure that you guys can see my screen.
I had a quick question.
Sure.
So I'm trying to make sure that it's in my applications folder. Do I go to the Finder?
Yep.
Or how do I find my folder?
Yep, you're going to go to Finder, and then you're going to go to Applications over on the left.
Oh, okay.
And then if VS Code is in that folder, you're good to go. If it's not, you can just go to the Downloads folder. Hopefully you have VS Code in here, and just drag and drop it into your applications.
Thank you.
Is this big enough, or should I go one step bigger? Can you guys read the word test there?
That's big for me.
Okay, cool. So you will learn very quickly how to juggle multiple windows. I will say that there were probably about a quarter of the students last cohort that used part of their stipend to buy a monitor. You can buy like a 24-inch monitor for $80 or $100 on Amazon. And you may find that super helpful, especially for remote classes, to be able to have the code that I'm sharing on one screen and all of us on one screen, and then having the code you're actually working on your laptop, or vice versa. So just something to consider. If you do end up getting that, keep in mind that you're going to need to also buy a USB-C to HDMI cord or a USB-C to HDMI adapter. But something to keep in mind, we'll be doing a fair amount of screen sharing and live coding together, and then that will only get more complex to juggle as we get into full stack development, because we'll not only have the code that we're working on and the browser to check the code, we're also going to have 2 terminal windows, an additional window for our backend code, and a window for our database. So as a developer, I use 2 27-inch external monitors, which are huge, and it makes my office look like a command station. You don't need to go all out on that setup to get started, but I think most of the developers I know use at least one external monitor. So just something to keep in mind. I actually find that while I can work one day remotely on my laptop, which is the 16-inch screen, I can't work remotely for an entire week without my monitors, right? It's like they're so much part of my workflow that I really struggle with that 16-inch screen on just that. So if you guys find that you've got some money in your stipend and got some wiggle room there, I will drop a link to a recommended monitor in the chat, either during break or right after class. And just something you guys can consider going from there. Okay, hopefully I've stalled for long enough. Everyone give me a thumbs up if you've got VS Code installed and open to a getting started screen that looks like this. Awesome, awesome. Virtual thumbs up are completely fine if you've got your camera off. Awesome, seeing all you guys. All right, we are going to get started with our first HTML file. So what we're going to do is we're going to hit new file, and this always pops up, right? It's basically saying, what kind of file would you like to create to get started? And I find it really annoying that Jupyter Notebook is actually the default one. It really should be text file, but because it's alphabetical, So you can either come down and hit text file, or you can hit the down arrow so text file is selected and hit enter on that. But basically, a Jupyter notebook is something for like project setup. We won't actually be using it. But this text file is 99% of the time what we will want to create, because we're going to save it as an HTML file down the road. So we're going to click text file there, and that's going to pop us into this thing that says Untitled 1, and it says select a language to get started, start typing to dismiss or do not show again. And then you probably don't have this pop up, but if you've got anything going on in the bottom right here, feel free to hit the little X button to close it. Okay, so to get started, good habit before you enter any code is to save the file first. So when I go to save, it's going to pop up this tiny little save window. This is going to be really frustrating because it doesn't give you any control other than these options here. So what you're going to do is hit this little drop down over to the right, and now you're going to get a full file browser, which should make life much easier. So I'm going to go to my desktop, and I'm going to create a new folder, and I'm going to call this C3 my code.
I'm sorry, Max.
Yep.
How did you get to the save option?
Great question. I hit Command S from the keyboard. You can also go up to the top from File and drop down to Save.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. And this is the window you'll get. You want to click on that little arrow here, and that's going to expand it out so you can navigate a little bit. So I'm going to go to my desktop, and I'm going to hit New Folder and create a C3 my code, or you can just call it my code. The general thinking here is there will be code that we will be giving you as a starting point that you'll want to keep separate from your code. So super, super important to stay organized here, because you'll find that if you don't stay on top of your organization now, when you go back to work on any of these projects down the road, it's going to bite you in the butt. So I'm going to do C3 my code, and that's going to create the folder on my desktop, and then I'm going to create another folder, and I'm going to call that W2 for week 2. And then I'm going to create yet another folder inside of there for D1, day 1 of week 2. Whatever organization system you want to use, that's completely fine. I generally recommend not putting spaces in your file names, because that can make it harder to operate within the terminal and to deploy those files down the road and to link to them. So I recommend using what we call snake case or camel casing, which means you either use dashes wherever you would put a space, or you make the first letter of each word uppercase, so you can tell the words apart. But again, my file path that I'm using here is my desktop, C3 my code, week 2, day 1. And I'm going to pop open all of those, and then up at the top here in Untitled 1, I'm going to call this index.html. Index is a special word that basically says, hey, whenever this file gets uploaded to a web server, if there's no file path in the URL, default to opening this file. So you can think of it kind of as your home page, right? Index.html is just a standard that web servers use. And the .html is actually going to tell VS Code, hey, when we're working on this file, this is HTML. So use the proper syntax highlighting, because we could be writing CSS, we could be writing JavaScript, we could be writing any of the other programming languages that we don't cover, like Python or Java or Ruby, all in VS Code. So this .html is super important. Not only is it telling VS Code what kind of code we're writing, what kind of syntax, it's also going to tell the web browser, hey, this is a file type that you can open and render out and show. So I'm going to create my index.html, and if it pops up and says, hey, VS Code would like to access files on your desktop, I'm going to say, okay, that's completely fine. And we should end up in a blank file. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with hello world, which is a programming tradition. And you see this little dot up at the top? That means, right next to the words index.html, that means our file is not yet saved. So I'm going to intentionally forget to save my file. I'm going to go to Finder, and I'm going to go to my desktop, and I'm going to open up my code. I'm going to open up week 2. I'm going to open up D1. And if that file structure, or you may get lost in there, I really like coming up to this 4 grid icon and changing it to as columns. I find it easier to be able to navigate and understand what folders I'm in. And so this is kind of showing you the whole path. Again, that's this icon right up here at the top. It should default to icons, which is the 4 little grids. And then if you want to use any of these other ones, that's a completely personal preference. I just like the columns. And I'm going to double click on index.html. And what we should get is a completely blank page in Chrome or Safari, whatever browser you have, that's completely fine. I should note that we will be requiring Chrome later in the curriculum, probably this week. So if you don't have Chrome installed and set to your default browser, you should do that at some point. But we've got this empty page here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my VS Code. I'm going to shrink my window down just a little bit so I've got overlap and can jump between the two of them. I'm going to hit Command S to save my file, and you'll notice that dot up here just turned into an X. That means the latest version of my file is saved. So I'm going to come back over to Chrome. I'm going to refresh, and I'm going to get Hello World. We technically have just written our first HTML. It is invalid HTML, which we'll fix in a second, but we've got our first HTML written. So if you are following along with me, hopefully you've got Hello World showing up in the browser. I'm realizing I did not have my chat open, so apologies if I missed anything. Yes, when you save the file for the first time, when you get it into the folder up here at the top, you want to make sure that it says index.html in the day 1 folder, which it's not showing. So my file path was desktop over here on the left, my code W2D1, and then up here at the top, I changed untitled to index.html, and I hit the save button. And then I opened that file from Finder, and Chrome popped it open for me and said, Hello World. So I'm going to actually kick off the poll. I know it may seem like overkill, but the way these polls work is you are going to not vote if you're still trying to figure it out, if you're still working on it. If you got it working, go ahead and hit the sure did and go ahead and vote. And then if you're not following along with me and you just want to move on to the next topic, go ahead and hit that no but keep going. You will be amazed at how helpful these are at knowing kind of where the class is at and when to move on. And if you're stuck anywhere, unmute, ask questions. I will stop my screen share, and you guys can, if you have any questions, go ahead and ask them. Yep, go ahead and share your screen, Zach, and don't forget to unmute.
Let me see. So the only problem I'm having here is when I go to the folder.
Okay, so
it doesn't come up in the.
Can you hear me?
I'm muted. It doesn't come up.
Can you hear me now?
Cool. Browser. Yeah.
Okay, so the mistake you made is that you created, if you go back, if you open up CIC my code, I'm sorry, C3 my code, and then go to week 2, and then day 1, you accidentally created index.html as a folder instead of a file. So we're going to actually delete that. That works. You can do command delete, or if you hold in the control key and click on anything, that will give you the right click menu, or you can use 2 fingers on your trackpad to right click. Plenty of options there. We're going to go back to VS Code and go ahead and close that file because we deleted it, and do a new file and text file and hello world there. And then when you hit Command S to save that, we're going to do the save as up at the top. as index.html. Check your spelling there. .html.
Sorry, what?
Yeah, you have HMTL. It should be HTML.
Thanks.
Okay, and save.
Do I move it into that folder?
Yep, that's fine. And save. And now from the desktop, you should be able to go back through those folders and double click on index.html. And there's your hello world.
Sweet. Thank you.
Awesome. No problem. Okay, so we've got about 10 votes in, which should be a pretty good tipping point. Do we have anyone that's stuck anywhere?
I'm just trying to get the live server to pop up. I already have it installed, but it's not doing anything.
Yeah, so we won't need live server quite yet. We'll get to that as we set up developer tools, but for today's class, you should just be able to double click on the HTML file and have it pop up.
Okay.
We might get to live server later in the week, but for just basic playing around, we shouldn't need it. Live server, just so everyone knows, makes it so when we save an update to the file, it automatically refreshes in our browser. But for today's just general intro to HTML, we're going to try and keep it as simple as possible.
Okay. What did you mean by double click on it?
If you just go into Finder and navigate through your folders, if you just double click on index.html, it should open in your web browser.
Oh, okay. No, I meant okay, so I have it all set up in VS Code. So you don't want it to like show live or anything, is what you were saying?
Yeah, we won't use live server yet.
Okay.
We're just going to pop open the individual file.
Okay.
I got stuck when the screen says index.html and then tags and then where is that just saving to my MacBook Pro or my desktop?
Yep, it's going to save on your laptop. What you want to do is make sure that you've got something on your desktop created for my code. If you I'm not sharing my screen like an idiot. Sorry.
Well, I made a random folder. Would that be fine?
Yep, the random folder is fine. You just want to keep it that as organized as you can. But yeah, as long as you save it into that folder as index.html, you should be fine.
Okay, and I don't have to change the format, correct?
Correct. Yeah, all you need to do is index.html, select what folder to save it in. You don't need any tags or format or anything like that, and then just hit save.
Okay, and how do I get it to pop up in the browser?
You're going to go to Finder, and then Desktop, and then navigate through until you find that file that you created, and then just double click on it.
Okay, all right, thank you. Sorry.
So I was kind of following along when you were answering Zach's question, but I'm kind of stuck at where you said, so after I do the index.html and I type in hello world, what am I doing after that? You said close it. Am I pressing enter and then closing it, or?
So go ahead and share your screen just so I can see where you're at. Okay, so it looks like you've got the file created, so go ahead and hit Command S to save it. And then come out of full screen because we're going to go back into Finder. You got it. You should be able to hit the escape button too and have it come out.
Yeah, I just tried. It wasn't letting me. Okay.
And then go to Finder, which is bottom left of your dock. Yep. And then Desktop. And then C3 My Code. I'm guessing that's where you put it.
Mm-hmm.
And then W2. And then D1. And then double click on that. And that should pop it open in your web browser. So you're good to go.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
No problem. Any other questions before we move on?
Oh, wait. So that's what I meant. Okay, that's what I was asking you. So I think I was saying like the live preview. So you just said like to get it to show up in the browser like that. How did you do that? Like,
So, do you have your file saved?
yes.
Okay, so go to
Yep.
Finder.
Finder. All right.
and then navigate through your folders until you find the file.
Okay. Found it.
And then double click on it.
Oh, okay, gotcha. All right, yeah, it worked. All right.
Okay, cool. Zach, I personally hate the split screen that's built into the Mac. Basically, if you hover over the little green icon and leave your mouse there for long enough, it will say tile window to the left of the screen and the right of the screen, and then you can open something else up on the other one. I cannot stand the full screen mode built into the Mac. I am a huge Apple fanboy, but I think that's one of the few things Windows does well, of being able to grab the window and like flick it to the side and have it just snap into that file, that window size. There is a tool called Better Snap Tool that I do think is like $3 or $4 that restores that functionality, worth every single penny in my opinion. There's another one called Cinch, C-I-N-C-H, that you can download that will also do that. Cinch may be free, I can't remember. But the functionality built into the Mac you can use for doing kind of file split screens. And if you are stuck in full screen mode and cannot get out of it, if you put your mouse at the top of the window, it should bring down the green button again, and then you can click on that and come out of full screen. Like I said, I can't stand that full screen mode, but if you find it helpful, feel free to use it. And I will drop links for Cinch and Better Snap Tool into the resources in case you're interested. Oh, and Caitlin mentioned it before I even could. Yeah, Better Snap Tool and Cinch are great. Okay, I don't know if I even have it. Yeah, so Better Snap Tool makes it so... Let me share my screen again. If you have it installed, if you grab the window and just drag it over to the right, it like automatically makes it half width for you. And then you can do things like dragging it up into the corner, I think, and it will make it, it will just snap things around for you. Okay. So we've got Hello World. We are good to go. However, this Hello World is not valid HTML, and that's because HTML requires what we call HTML elements or tags, right? The browser is showing this to us to be nice. It's saying, I understand you've got some Hello World because it's in the HTML file type, the .html. I understand you just want me to show it. But the whole point of HTML is that it's hypertext markup language. And what markup means is that we can use certain attributes in order to get the browser to make it look the way we want to. But before we can get to any content, we need to tell the browser, hey, anything coming in here is HTML. So if I type my first HTML tag, VS Code is going to try and be nice and throw in my closing HTML tag. Every HTML tag needs to have every HTML element needs an opening tag and a closing tag. If not, you're going to get really confused and the browser is going to show things where you don't want them to show up. So from there, we are going to say, hey, there are two parts to every website. There's the head, and the head is going to include all the information the browser needs, and the body, which is what's actually going to show up to the end user. So we're going to come back to the head. We're going to put in our body tag, and I'm going to hit... Yep.
I'm sorry, Max. What did you press to get this these numbers? It wasn't it. What did you click after you did the open tag, close tag of the HTML? What did you click to get it to go to number 2?
Oh, just the enter button, the return button on the keyboard.
Oh, oh, never mind. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Sorry.
And so you'll notice indentation here, it's automatically, every time we go down another tag level, it's kind of indenting things for us, right? We want to make sure that we keep our indentation right because it's going to make it much easier for us to understand, hey, what is nested in this tag? What comes in this tag? So we're going to do our first HTML element outside of HTML and body, and we're going to do an H1. Right, and an H1 is our header tag, and we're going to say my first header. Now remember to save, because if we don't save and we come back over to the browser, it's still going to say hello world. But as long as we saved, which we know we did because this is an X and not a filled in circle, when we come over here and refresh, we should get my first header. Now mine's going to be a little bit bigger because I've zoomed in on the browser, but it should be bigger than your hello world. Okay.
Really quick, mine keeps doubling everything, like double the. How do I not get it? Because I'm like going back and.
What do you mean by doubling?
So like I put in body and I press enter, it'll be like body 2 more times under the body.
Can you share your screen?
Oh. Your screen. Do I go to code unknown?
If you do, when you share your screen, just pick desktop 1 and that should share everything.
Oh, okay. Oh, hold on. It's making me do my system preferences.
Sure.
It's okay. I can just delete everything. I don't know my password right now.
Okay. Yeah, you should. It's Chaz mentioned a good point. You should actually have 2 body tags. You should have your opening body tag here and your closing body tag down here. And so we know it's a closing body tag because it's got a slash in front of it.
Well, yeah, no, it was 4 of them. It was
Okay.
like
yeah, so one thing, if I delete this out, when I do my body tag, I'm going to either hit enter here, which is going to auto-complete it, and then I'm going to do my closing arrow, and when I do my closing arrow, only after I do my closing arrow do I want to hit enter. Because if you don't, it's going to get confused, and if I say body 1, 2, 3, oh, it's not even going to do it there. But it's going to get confused if you don't have your closing tag, and then just make sure where your cursor is. So my cursor is between my 2 tags right now, so if I hit enter there, it shouldn't have a duplicate in. So I'm gonna
thank you.
Throw my I said my first H1 tag. Okay, so if I come over here, I got my first H1 tag. We should be good to go. Any other questions before I move on?
I thought it was my first header. Are we changing it?
Doesn't matter.
Okay.
Yeah, as long as the homework tonight is just turn in whatever you've played around with for HTML. It does not need to look exactly like mine. It can say whatever you want. As long as you've got the basic elements in them, you should be good to go. Okay, so up at the top, you'll see that it says index.html. Well, that's really annoying, right? If we go to any other browser or any other website, it's going to tell me like the name of the website that we're on or the name of the file or whatever it is. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back into my HTML, and between line 1 and 2, I'm going to put my cursor at the end of line 1, I'm going to hit enter, and I'm going to put in a new tag called head. Right? And definitely feel free to play around here. VS Code is trying to be helpful with the autocomplete, but sometimes that takes a little while to settle into. So head has all kinds of special tags that we can put in it, but basically what the head is doing is it's saying, hey browser, you're not actually going to show any of this in the web page itself, but here's some information that I need to make the web page look the way I want it to. So we're going to put in a tag called title, and I'm going to say my first web page. And I'm going to make sure to save that. I'm going to come over to the browser. I'm going to refresh. And you'll notice up at the top, my title for this tab changed to my first web page. So nothing actually changed in the website itself. The only thing that changed is the title up here. Pausing for questions.
Can you move that one off so I can see the code?
Yep. And what I'm going to actually do is, during the break, I'm going to install live share so you guys can click through and see the code as I'm writing it.
It is getting a little, because I see what she means by it's like with the autocomplete, like when I press, like when I do the like if I do the front end of head without the before I put, close it, uh it basically closes it for me if I press enter rather than allowing me to go down to the next line and write that code and then close it. Like
Yeah.
it.
So what you want to do is type the full first tag, including the closing arrow here.
Okay.
And then if you hit enter, it's going to put your cursor in the right spot and also put in the closing tag for you. So if I'm up here and I type in HEAD and close my tag, that's going to insert the closing tag, and then if I hit enter, it's going to do the right thing.
Oh, so just enter, just click enter. I'm gonna just it's like a double enter thing.
If you if you do head, close the arrow, and then hit enter, it will do the right thing. If you do head, if you do head and don't close it, then do a double enter, it will work. So your options are either close that second arrow and then hit enter once, or don't do the closing arrow and double enter, and it will do the same thing.
Okay, cool. Got it. That's where it was like, okay.
Okay.
I have a question.
Sure, shoot.
When my code looks like yours, but I don't see anything that says on my first web page.
Is it at the top of the window or the top of the tab in Safari?
I don't think so, no.
Okay, then go ahead and share your screen.
Yeah, where are you?
Safari, why do you do this? Go ahead and hit Command, click into Safari, and then hit Command T. And now you'll see that you've got a new tab, but look at what your other tab is called.
Gotcha. Okay.
So Safari is, good question. Safari is kind of weird in that it doesn't show you the title or the tab name unless you've got another tab open. But you did everything right. Safari's just being finicky and not showing that.
Okay. Thank you.
Max, I was going to ask, how did you have the tab showing when you had only one window open?
I'm using Chrome, and so because I'm using Chrome, it behaves a little differently. I would encourage everyone coming into tomorrow's class to have Chrome installed because we're going to start using those dev tools. And I would also encourage you use that as your default browser. Safari is great, and no one can beat Safari in terms of battery life. If you're on a plane and you need your battery to last forever, Safari is the browser to use. But Chrome has hands down the industry best developer tools. Safari and Firefox try, but they have something similar, and I'm sure if you play around with those developer tools enough, you could get what you need out of them. But when we start using developer tools tomorrow, it's probably going to be easier to follow along if you have Chrome installed. So I would highly recommend installing Chrome just so you can follow along with class.
Okay, I have one more quick question.
Yep.
How do I refresh it so I can see if it says my first web page?
So make sure it's saved in VS Code. So when you're in VS Code, hit Command S, and that will make the little dot next to the file name turn into a little X. And then in the browser that has the file open, hit Command R, and that should refresh the page.
Yeah, mine's went into the... Yeah, it went to the... It didn't go on there. But I'm pretty sure I can figure it out.
Okay. Yeah, let me know if you're having problems and we can catch you up. Okay.
In response to just Kaylin real quick, she said something about using a thing called like the snap tool. How do you get to that, and is it free for like split screen?
Better Snap tool is not free. I believe one called Cinch is. But I will put links to that in the outline. Or okay. Caitlin, if you want to put links to Cinch and Better Snap Tool in the outline and install that, that's completely optional. I don't want to take class time for it. But if you're used to the Windows functionality of snapping windows to the left and right or full screen, that Cinch and Better Snap Tool are helpful.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
No problem.
But
Yeah, and
Max, on the
working
Mac,
getting those links in now. Yeah.
on the Mac, you said to do the snap, you hold down on the green circle.
Yeah, if you just leave your mouse over the green circle, there should be a little drop down that appears. You don't click on it, you just leave your mouse over the green circle, and then it will have tile window to the left or tile window to the right. And that's what will put you in the native Mac full screen and let you have 2 windows open or go into regular full screen. You can also right-click on the green button, which is a 2-finger tap on the trackpad, and that should also bring up that window so you don't have to leave your mouse hovering over it. Okay, any other questions before we move on? Okay, so we're going to keep going. There are lots of different HTML elements, and you should be able to see a list of them in the outline. So we're going to just rapid fire through some of them. By the way, a student in the first cohort got me a mug that says "You're on mute" because I would constantly be telling people you're on mute. The other one that you guys will be telling me all the time is "You're not sharing your screen. We can't see what you're talking about." So feel free to interrupt me if at any point I'm talking about something and don't have my screen shared. It's because I stopped it so one of you guys could share your screens and then forgot to resume it for myself. So feel free to yell at me and say, "I don't know what you're talking about. You're not sharing your screen." Okay, so a couple other elements we're going to rapid fire through quickly. The P tag stands for paragraph. That's for any of our text that should show up in the website, pretty standard. We're going to say my first paragraph, and we can have multiple P tags, so I'm going to say my second paragraph. I'm going to remember to hit Command S to save. I'm going to switch back over to my browser. I'm going to hit refresh, and you're going to see my first H1, my first paragraph, my second paragraph, and I'm actually spell that right. So we get our text showing up. We can keep going there, and we can say, well, what if I want an extra line break between these two, right? I want it to be another paragraph. We can come back to our code. I'm going to hit enter just to make sure that we've got our spacing right. And I'm going to put in a little BR with a slash at the end. And that is our self-closing tag, right? A BR doesn't have an opening and a closing because nothing goes in a line break. So we're going to do BR with a little slash at the end. That's a self-closing tag. And when I refresh, you'll see my paragraph jump down a space. All right, we're going to keep it going. Bullets are super easy to do. I'm going to do a little UL tag. That stands for unordered list. You're going to see what an ordered list is in a second. And I'm going to do an LI for a list item. And I'm going to say my first paragraph or my first bullet. And I'm going to do another LI tag. And I'm going to say my second bullet. And keep in mind here that these are indented another level because they're inside the UL tag. So whenever we go inside a UL, we're going to indent another level over. I'm going to come over here, I'm going to refresh, and I got my little bullets going on. Okay, well, what about an ordered list? That's going to be an OL, and I'm going to come in here, and I'm just going to copy and paste and say my first number, my second number. I'm going to save, I'm going to come over here, I'm going to refresh, and I get 1 and 2. So it's automatically creating those numbers for me because it is an ordered list.
One sec, Max, sorry.
No problem.
For the ordered list, did you put that? Okay, I just want to see where it was actually put. It was underneath the unordered.
Yes. All right, I'm going to keep going here just a little bit, and then we'll give time for everyone to catch up. And if you're already caught up, we'll have a little bit longer of a break. I try to give everyone 20 minutes of like no teaching, no mentoring, no instruction time. Here's 20-minute break. But let's go for another like 12 minutes. We'll go for another 12 minutes. Try and get through all of these tags so you've got an idea of them, and then we'll leave 15 minutes for any help getting caught up, and then we'll take our 20-minute break. Okay, so this is all great, but what if I want to make several different sections in my site? So I'm actually going to edit my H1 tag, and I'm going to say my first section, and then I'm going to come down here, and I'm going to use what is called an HR, and that HR is going to put in a horizontal rule line that's going to break up the site, and then I'm going to use an H2. There's H1 through H6. Every time you go down a step, it gets a little bit smaller. The reason why there are 1 through 6 is because people who build HTML thought if you've got more than 6 sizes of headers on your website, you're probably not thinking through what should be headers, right? So you can use H1 through H6 by default, and I'm going to say my second section, save that, come over here, refresh. I got my horizontal rule, my HR, and I got my second section, and you'll notice my second section is just a little bit tinier than my first section, because one's an H1, the other one's an H2. Okay, we're going to keep going here. We are going to say in my second section, we're going to start a table. And a table is interesting because there are all kinds of little subtags that you can put in them. So we're going to actually start with the table head. And in the table head, we are going to say that there is a TH, which stands for table header. And we are going to come in here and do a TD, which is our table data. And we're going to say first column and second column. And when I refresh, I get that showing up in my browser. Now, that's not a very good table. It doesn't help us at all because we don't have any table data in it. So what we're going to do is we're going to come out of the table head and go into the table body. And in our table body, we are going to do a TR. That stands for table row. And our table row is going to have table data. That's going to say first data, first row. And we're going to do another TD, and that's going to be our first data, first row, second col, first col. And then we're going to take all of that. We're going to copy this TR because we want another row. And in that row, there is going to be more table data. And this is, I'm just going to take out the words first data. We're going to say second row, first column, second row, second column. And that may not make any sense until you come over to the browser, refresh, and you can start to get an idea of where the columns are going to show up. Although there's a problem there. My first column isn't lining up. Caitlin, do you see what I did wrong? Maybe I shouldn't have done, maybe these should be THs. May have been a minute since I've last used.
Yeah.
There we go. Okay, that was my mistake. So these should be THs. TH stands for table header. And what that's going to do is it's going to make it show up in bold. But you can kind of see where my columns are. It's automatically centering this top one for me. But that brings up an interesting point of because I had these wrapped in the wrong tag, now my indentation is incorrect, right? Because table head, these two rows should be over right here on this line and not indented 2 levels in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit Shift Tab on both of those, and that's going to bring it back to the indentation level that it should be. So again, it should be table head and have my THs at the top. And then in my table body, I'm going to use TRs instead because that's a table row, and then TDs for table data as opposed to THs for table head. Okay, Believe it or not, we're making progress. I just want to do a couple more, and then we'll take a break and get anyone caught up who's a little bit behind. Okay, so we've covered most of the basics. Let's go into using a little bit of a form. So forms we see all over on the web for contact forms, for adding a comment to Facebook, for typing something into Google and doing a search. So we're going to do a form tag and make sure we have our closing form tag. And we are going to start with a basic input. So if I save that, come over here, you see we get this little box showing up. I can click in it, I can type in it, and that's great. But there are lots of different kinds of inputs. So we're going to use our first HTML attribute. Attributes are information that go inside the opening tag itself, and they never go inside the closing tag. So input, I'm going to say, hey, the input type that I want, and you can see VS Code's trying to help us here, right? It's saying, do you want a date? You want a checkbox? What do you want? I'm going to just do a number, and I'm going to save that and come back over to Chrome. And you see now when I hover over here, it's got little up and down. So I can hit the little up button and it's going to set the number for us. Now this is just the beginning of, hey, what attributes can I use here? And so you could totally rely on VS Code, or if we just hover over input, you see it's going to pop up this link that says MDN. MDN stands for Mozilla Developer Network. And they just maintain a lot of the HTML standards for us in a website. So if I pop that open, it's going to give me the form input element, and it's going to give me some information on it, right? Including input types, right? And so we can come in here and say, oh, I want more information about the number, and it's actually going to render out to me what a number input looks like, as opposed to a month input, right? Which is going to give you this nice little date picker on the side. So you can use these MDN for looking up all the different attributes that a particular HTML element may support, including even if we go down to type, you'll see what kind of inputs it's expecting. So let's play with this value. I'm going to use that value tag. I'm going to do a space, and I'm going to say value equals 5. And save that, come back to my first web page, refresh, and you'll see 5 is in as the value. Okay, inputs are great, but we need a way to send that data somewhere. So we're going to use a button, and we're going to say submit. And when we come back over here and refresh, we get our nice little submit button showing up. Okay, all of that's great, but what if we want a bigger text area? Well, we can come in here and we can do a little text area and save that. Notice I didn't do a self-closing tag yet. That's because when I refresh, I'm going to get my little text area in here, but every HTML attribute is a little different. So instead of HTML element. So instead of using value for text area is a little unique in that whatever you put inside that text area tag is what's going to show up in the text area. So this should show up in my text area as a starting point. And if I refresh, you see that shows up in my text area. And we can get fancy and say, hey, I want to add in a placeholder. Now, placeholder is an HTML attribute. It doesn't go inside the tag. And I'm going to say, you deleted my text. So if I save that and refresh, you'll see that that value is still showing up here. But if I hit Command A and delete, you'll see the little placeholder that shows up. Little grayed out text. And I can type in ABC, and that placeholder will disappear. Okay, one more form type, and then we're going to take a break. We are going to use a select, which you might know as a dropdown. And select is not a self-closing tag because we need to tell it what options it takes. So we're going to have an option, and we're going to say A, and we're going to do B, and we're going to do C. We come over here, we refresh, we get our little drop-down showing up, we get A, B, C, and if we want it to start without a value, we can add a new option and make it No, we can't. We can just make a new option that's got an empty tag. So if we come over here, refresh, it's not set to anything. We come in, we click B, now we're good to go. Okay, we've got only one more type. Let me make sure I didn't. We've got two more tag types, images and A tags, but I'm going to save that for after the break. So we're going to spend the next 15 minutes getting anyone caught up who needs to be caught up. I'm going to put my code into the CIC live stream channel. So there is a copy of it. You should not copy and paste any of this code. You need experience typing these out, getting it working, getting familiar with the syntax, working through VS Code, all of that fun stuff, right? So don't copy and paste any of the code from there, but you're welcome to reference in the CIC Livestream C3 channel in Slack. I just put a copy of all of my code in so you can see it. So if you are all caught up, if all of your HTML is working and looking just like my browser does, go ahead on break, be back at 7:20. If you are stuck somewhere or need help debugging, I will be around for the next 15 minutes to help with that. Otherwise, go take a long break.
Hey Max, I need help. So
Sure.
I was following along, and when I went to go hit refresh, I noticed that nothing was popping up.
Okay, go ahead and share your screen and let's see where you're at.
Okay.
And Max, I'm going to jump in on my own and try to catch up on my own. Thank you.
No problem. See ya.
Okay. Sorry.
Okay, so the first thing I noticed in your VS Code
Yeah.
is that you have a little dot right here. And that dot means this file is not saved. So go ahead and hit Command S, which is going to save the file. Try clicking in. Yeah, hit Command S now. And now the file's saved. So if you go back to your browser, click into the browser and hit Command R.
Oh, okay.
Very common thing, and you're going to see me do that, I don't know, Caitlin, 40 times a class, would you say? Where I'm going to say, why isn't that working? I thought that should be working, and it's because I forgot to hit Command S before I went back over to the browser. So there will be times when I spend 5 minutes debugging going, this should all be working, and then I realize I forgot to save my file before I went over to the editor. So definitely a very common thing that happens.
Thank you.
Max, can you put your code back up on the screen for one more second, please?
Yeah, so I would encourage you pop open Slack and go to the CIC Livestream C3 channel, and that way you can reference the code there, and I can keep the channel open for anyone else who needs help.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. And if you have trouble getting to it in Slack, let me know and I can guide you in.
Okay, I'm gonna try to copy it. I'm just getting a little frustrated just because, or discouraged. Well, because I know that I could follow you, and it's not that you're going too fast. It's just that I wish that, and maybe like I'll just do it for myself, that because I was having a hard time finding this week's outline in Canva, but I end up going to the YouTube links and clicking like the HTML. Like as you're saying the code, and I want to put a borderline here, like I want to be able to at least know that I read over the codes prior to class, so that as I'm going by with you, I know what I'm putting. Like it's clicking afterwards. Like I know that if I watch your videos later on, it'll click more, but it's just like frustrating me because I feel like I know how to do this and I get it, what you're doing, but as I'm doing it, I don't know what I'm typing until after you're saying it and then I'm seeing it. I just may need to look at the codes a little bit. And then also I don't know if I need to probably play with VS Code a little bit and maybe like take out the autocorrect, because it's not helping me at all. Like even with the double, and I'm just getting so frustrated because I'm not going back, and it's like,
yeah. So what I would say is that frustration is just something you have to work through, and getting started as a developer, like VS Code is very customizable, and you can totally turn off the autocomplete. Let me actually show you how to do that. So if you go to code up at the top and drop down to preferences and then over to settings, up at the top you can do a search for autocomplete, I believe. And right here it says, nope, that's not right. Stand by. Auto. Yeah, so both of these, the auto closing delete and the auto closing overtype, you can just go in there and switch those to never. And that should help. And then the other thing you can do, if you scroll down a little bit more, like auto closing brackets, you can change that from language defined to never. Auto closing quotes, you can do the same. Auto indent, I would recommend you leave enabled, but if you don't want it, you can turn that off. And then there should also be a suggestion that you can start turning some of these suggestion ones off as well. Again, I don't encourage that. I encourage that you work through VS Code because it's very easy to forget to put in the closing tags if it doesn't auto-populate for you. But I know a lot of developers who really hate the fact that it's auto-suggesting things and doing that for them, and they end up turning that off. So that's totally personal preference. That's completely fine. But the other thing I wanted to touch on is that some people cannot stand keeping up with me in class, right? Some people just want to see it all get done, and then they want to go do their homework after class, and then only go to the video if they need a recap, right? That is completely fine. There are other students who are going, no, wait, take a break. I want to catch up. Like, I'm almost there. I almost have this, right? And so everyone learns a little differently. That is completely fine. You don't have to follow along in class, and you can try and follow along in class and get stuck 20 minutes in and go, screw it. I'll just do this later, right? I'll catch up after class, or let me just play with this and then, absorb the information the first time, try and use the information the second. The third thing I will say, I screwed up on the outline. I published the outline in Canvas, and I'll actually show you what it looks like on my side. I had, so when I go to modules, which is how I add things as a teacher, you notice this little green check mark here? That, to me, says I had published it, so I thought that was live at, like, noon today. What I didn't realize was this publish hadn't gone through. So I had put the outline on, but forgot to publish the week 2 module. And because of that, you didn't see that. And I had just started class assuming that you had access to that. So I went ahead and I published that. So now in modules in Canvas, the outline should show up. If for whatever reason the outline isn't there at the beginning of class, feel free to call me out on it, because it's probably something that I did wrong. So let me know. And the other place you can find the outline is if you go to the schedule and YouTube links. Under here, you'll see there's a week 2, day 1 outline. That's the other way to get to outlines if for whatever reason they aren't in Canvas. So hopefully that will be more helpful in terms of prepping for class if you want to. But hopefully that gives you a little guidance for moving forward. It is incredibly frustrating writing HTML for the first time, and I don't want you to feel like that's abnormal. Like, that is very much a normal thing of starting to program. Syntax is always tricky, and by the end of tonight, I'm not expecting you to be an HTML native. We are spending the next 3 weeks, 2 or 3 weeks, I think 3 weeks, just on HTML. So over time, this is going to, with practice, this is going to start to feel more natural, and you're going to be able to line up those tags and feel like the text editor isn't fighting you. And if you feel like it's fighting you, play around in preferences and figure out what it's doing, and you'll likely find a way to be able to turn that off as well. Christy, shoot.
So when I downloaded VS Code when you told us to.
Yep.
But when I got ready to go into VS Code, it was asking me to like set it up. So it was asking me all these questions. So when you started doing the folders and the files and all that stuff, I was stuck on the page where they were asking me questions that I want.
Yes.
2 rows.
So in the future, interrupt me and go, whoa, I'm stuck here, right? Just so that you can catch up and follow along. But to answer your question, there should be a little link in the bottom left that says mark is done. And if you click that button, it should get you started.
I saw that, but I didn't know if I should touch it. Okay, so yeah, so now, so in order to get the right files and folders, do I need, well, is that in the outline, or can I just watch the video over tomorrow? And
you can watch the video over and go through those same steps.
Okay.
Unfortunately, there's no way for me to like rewind, like share the video and rewind it so you can catch up live in class.
I know that I actually wrote down the time, so I know what time you, because I was stuck. So Perfect. I know what time I need to go to. I can fast forward. Okay, Perfect. That was my.
Yeah,
and Strange, I got frustrated too, because I'm like, wait, but I understand now. It's gonna take some time for us to. It's funny because I went ahead with the homework. Remember, I told you that at office hours, and so I understood what you were doing. I just couldn't get to the point to do it. So I'll work it out.
Yeah, in the future, definitely interrupt me and be like, "Whoa, red light, too fast! Like, slow down, right?" And I'm. It's not a problem, even if you're like, "Oh my god, this seems so trivial. Like, why? I'm just stuck at this one spot." Interrupt me at any point, right? Because again, if you're having the problem, how many other people on the call do you think are having that same exact problem? So interrupt me, or you can shoot a message in the Zoom chat and be like, I don't want to stop Max, but I'm stuck here, right? Because that's Caitlin's job, is to monitor that and get you unstuck. With that said, we can also spin you out into a breakout room. So if you ever notice Caitlin has disappeared, it's because we can break you out into a separate room, help you get caught up outside of class, and then come back into the classroom. So that is also very much an option as well. Of, remotely it's tough because in person the TA would just come over and you could ask the question and just keep going. But we can kind of emulate that virtually by throwing you in a breakout room. So if you do get stuck, feel free to just chat or interrupt me or message Caitlin in Slack or whatever it is, and we'll try and get you unstuck that way.
I'm finding that I think that I'll be able to go back and set everything up. But like when I was trying to find applications, I couldn't find it. And I'm wondering if having my personal Apple ID on here is good or bad, because
it shouldn't be causing any problems, but it may be syncing certain things over.
Right.
What I am wondering if I have added applications to my sidebar that's not there by default. So when everyone comes back from break at 7:20, I'll ask the class if they have applications in their sidebar, and if they don't, I'll show you how to add it.
Okay, yeah, because I think I did, but I'm not sure, but it would be nice to see it. So then that way, yeah, if we all see it. Okay.
Yep, I will do that as soon as everyone gets back.
Okay, I'm going to make a mad dash. I'll be right back.
Okay, I have a question now. So my daughter's here, so you'll hear in the back. So I'm looking over here on the live stream at the code, and I just had a question about so you know how it automatically does the the first part and then the second part with the close. Like I don't really know how to say it yet, but when I'm doing like the HR, for instance, like how do I know like that my body all the way at the top, like because I'm still typing it in, so like how do I know when to close the body, or like how do I know when to like
so
what was it exactly?
Anything going inside, anything that you would like to show up on the page itself so the end user can see it rendered, that's going to go inside the body.
Oh, I didn't see the whole code. I'm only looking at, I'm scrolling now. Sorry.
So the body will be, kind of towards the top, but not in the head, right? Because the head, all of what we're writing is HTML. So everything that we write is going in between those HTML tags. And then the head is only going to be things that don't show up to the end user, but the browser needs to know, like the title, which is why we've got those title tags in there. And then anything else is going to show up in the body. And so because we want that all to show up to the end user, that all goes in the body tag. So, you know, and then we can go even a level further down than that. Okay, if we want bullet points, well, those bullet points are going to be in an unordered list, which is the UL.
Really quick, I don't want to cut you off, but
Yep.
I'm just looking at this, and like for instance, it has the HR with the closing, but I can't find where the HR without the closing.
So that's a self-closing tag, meaning that it serves as the opening and the closing.
Oh, okay. All right, I got it. Thank you.
No problem. Yeah, that's what the slash in the first tag means, is that it's self-closing, meaning it's serving as both the opening and the closing.
Nicole, I just put a image in the live stream channel that basically identifies like the basic structure of an HTML page. So HTML tags encompass everything, and then there's the head with the title, and then below that, but outside of it, is the body, and then everything inside of that.
Okay, thank you.
That make more sense visually?
Yeah, absolutely. Cause I'm just typing everything, and I'm trying to get everything on the screen. So I'm like, okay, I'm not understanding why this one is like this, but okay, thank you.
You're
Caitlin,
welcome.
that's super helpful. Can you make sure to add that to the outline as well?
Yes. I just Googled it.
Yes, I am trying to be, I don't want to be politically incorrect here, but a Nazi on, if we're sharing a resource, let's make sure it gets captured in the outline so that we can find it later down the road. And I feel really bad that I forgot to publish the outline in Canvas. I was like so prepared, and I had my outline all set and ready to go. And then I'm like, I literally forgot one little checkbox. And anyway, I'm going to pause the recording, and we'll go on break until 7:20. Okay, so I'm actually going to kick off the poll again, and let's see where we're at. Did you get it working? Are you just waiting until the end of class to get it working? Where are we at? If you're still working on it, just let me know. Come off mute and say you're stuck somewhere. Want to make sure that we don't go too far ahead without people catching up. Okay, we got most of our poll results back. Gonna leave that open for one more minute. Hopefully get one or two more votes in there. I also shared a link in the CIC livestream Slack for a link that will let you join a session to watch me code like as I'm typing the code. If you find that easier than the screen share, feel free to join that, but that's completely optional. That will change night to night. But I will try and get in the habit of sharing them so you can kind of see my code and switch to that, even if my code isn't up in the screen share. Okay, it looks like we are making good progress. My goal for the next 35 minutes is to introduce us to a little CSS. We can play around with that. And then in the last 30 minutes, I'm going to leave it open for you guys to get a start on Free Code Camp. Make sure everyone can get Free Code Camp started, understands the exercises, doesn't have any sign-in problems. I'll stick around until 8:30 so you guys can work on Free Code Camp and let me know if you get stuck anywhere. I'm going to encourage everyone to stay in Zoom for that 30 minutes, and then if any questions pop up, you can tune in and see what's going on. But we won't do that until 8 o'clock. So for the next 35 minutes, we're going to talk about different places you can put CSS, intro to CSS styles, cascading style sheets, and then we will take a break and let you guys get a jump on your homework. Sound like a good plan for everyone? Cool.
Yes.
And then just a reminder for everyone of this is not, oh, I need to be an HTML master at the end of today or even the end of the week, right? We're going to be spending the next 3 weeks working with HTML, with CSS, working on different projects. We're going to do a really basic project. We're going to introduce the grid system and layout. We're going to keep building on all of this. And as you go, you're going to get more and more comfortable with HTML, with your code editor, with all of that. So this is just the start of the journey, right? And sometimes journeys necessarily have to start out rocky, right? So unfortunately, this is just one of those things. You tough through it, you get more and more practice with the syntax with your text editor, and as you get more comfortable with it, you'll be amazed at what you can build with all of these concepts. With that said, a lot of the homework is going to be recapping what we are covering tonight in class, and that homework does not need to be done tomorrow. I cannot stress that enough. There is, even if I were flying through all of that at top speed, I wouldn't be able to get that done in one night. So I don't expect you guys to have all of that turned in by tomorrow. That's just reinforcing all of this, because these are technical concepts that you won't be able to learn just in one day, right? So the whole point of Free Code Camp is reinforcing the concepts that we're going through in class. Okay. Looks like we are caught up. We actually have, I can show you guys what the poll results are. So looks like 11 of you guys, or 10 of you guys are caught up. And then one of you are just saying, hey, I'll catch up after class, which is completely fine. Okay, so let me go back to my screen share. Did anyone try the Visual Studio Code link in the live stream? Did anyone manage to make it in there and can see the code?
I clicked the link, but I do not see the code. I see the Visual Studio logo.
I use the code to catch up.
Let me see. Can you share your screen, Doug?
Yes.
That did not do what I wanted it to. Okay, close that tab and that one, and then go back to Slack and click on the link. Go to your VS Code and click on Manage up at the top. I'm sorry, right there. Yeah, you got it. And then hit Trust there. Okay, now if you close that again or hit the refresh button on it, that's still being a pain. Okay, this is something everyone should follow. I'm just gonna walk Doug through it, but in your VS Code, if you pop that open, over on the left here, there should be a little extensions button. And again, every student should be following this. You're gonna go up to the top and type in live share with a space in between. And this first install button is what you want to click. And from there, give it a second. Go ahead and click on the new live share icon that appeared over on the left side of your screen. One down from that.
Sorry.
Yep.
Gotcha.
Oh, try clicking on that again. It should pop open. Yeah, there you go. And then if you hit join, and then down in the bottom right, you can continue as anonymous. And now you can paste. Yep, go ahead.
Put the link up there.
No. You're right. Hit enter on that. And then try clicking on join again. Enter. Why does VS Code make this so hard? Hit, okay, we will try this at the top of tomorrow's class because it really should not be that hard. Normally you click on the link in Slack and it just pops open the right thing. But it may be a Safari versus Chrome issue. So I would say make sure everyone has Chrome installed for tomorrow's class, because that's when we're going to start using DevTools, and I think it will make it easier to join live share links. But we'll worry about that for tomorrow's class. Thank you, Doug, for working through that with me.
Yep,
So is it better to do it inside of Visual Code? Because I did it through my web browser, and it's still like it's telling me to like it's exploring, like it's searching for something. Is that what it's supposed to look like?
Oh, you know what? You just popped up. If I accept, see if that got you in.
It still says explored, I think.
Okay, we'll get that set up for tomorrow's class, just so you guys can see the code as I go. Okay, well, let's dive into our first CSS. So I'm gonna actually, I closed my outline. That was dumb. Let me pop that back open. Sorry, I use our outlines as much as you guys do. Okay, I'm going to share my screen. Okay, so the easiest way that we can use CSS is what is called an Inline Css Tag. And this is generally discouraged for regular HTML, although oddly enough, for when we get into React, inline style tags are more acceptable in React. And that's just the way the projects are set up. But in HTML, we can put a attribute on pretty much any HTML element or tag with the word style. And we're going to say equals, and it's going to automatically put in our quotes for us. And we're going to say our style, I would like the color, which is a CSS property, to be red. And I'm going to put a semicolon in there, hit the save button. And now when I come back over here and refresh, I have made my H1 red. Now, I can also come in here, and after the semicolon, I'm going to do a space, and I'm going to say text decoration is going to be an underline. And I'm going to save that, not forget my semicolon, come over here and refresh, and now I've got an underline going on. Now, you could say, Max, how do I know what all of those CSS properties are? Well, if you come down to the resources section, in addition to having all the HTML elements and tags, I also have all the CSS properties. Now you may say, Max, there are a whole heck of a lot of these. Do you use all of them? And the answer is no. But the ones that I do use, I have put down here. Right? And so those are the most common ones that I use. We're going to go over margin, padding, and border right now, but you can definitely play around with other ones in that list. Those are the most common ones. I don't want to discourage you from using other ones, because as your development goes on, you may find that you're using them. But this is generally a good starting point for CSS. So we can control things in here. For example, what if I think that this gap is too big for my first section, right? What if I want my first paragraph to be closer there? Well, what we can do is we can come in here and say, hey, the margin, which is the space around the element, I would like to be 0. And so I'm going to come back over here, refresh, and you notice that moved up just a tiny little bit. Well, tomorrow we'll dive into the dev tools, but if you right-click on something and hit inspect, you'll notice this thing down here at the bottom that's showing you where your margin, border, and padding are. I'll explain what the difference between margin and padding is in a second, but we can also look at our My First Paragraph here, and you'll see if I hover over it, it's showing us that orange around it. That orange, you'll notice down here, is saying, hey, there is margin not only on that H1 that we just removed because we said margin 0, there is some margin on that P tag as well. So if I come over to my P tag and I throw a style equals, and I say I would like my margin on that to be 0 as well, when I come over here and refresh, now all of a sudden I have gotten rid of that margin. Now I may say, hey, I want the margin to be 0 only on the top part. I would like the margin to stay the same on the bottom. We can modify our margin to say margin dash top is only going to be 0. So I come over here, I refresh, and you notice it kept it 0 here, but this got moved back down. And I can prove that because when I hover over it, there's only orange going on at the bottom of that. And if I scroll down here, it's telling me that my margin is 16. Let me blow this up a little bit. There. Okay, 2 other things that can be super helpful. I want to see kind of where my elements are taking up space. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to say my background is going to be green. So if I save that and refresh, you can now see where my p tag is taking up space, right? But what if I want to make it even more evident? I'm going to come in here, I'm going to keep adding things, and in here I am going to add a border. And border actually takes a couple CSS values. We're going to say I want my border to be 2 pixels, meaning that's the thickness of the border going all the way around it. I want it to be solid, and I want it to be yellow. So I come over here, I refresh, and you notice I've got my yellow border going on there. Okay, well, what happens if I come back in here and I say I would like to adjust my margin on this to be 15 pixels at the top? Well, if we notice, when we come over here and refresh, that moved it off the top, but that didn't make my green area any bigger. Margin is the space between elements. But if I would like that text to be kind of further in my green box, that's going to be padding. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to say, hey, I would like my padding to be 10 pixels all the way around. So I'm going to refresh, and now I've got 10 pixels of space here, here, over here, and down here, because padding is inside my box. Border is one thing around the padding, and then my margin is outside of my box, outside of the border, outside of the inner padding. So if you look down here, this is showing you, hey, padding is the innermost part. Border is showing up as 2 pixels right now because that's one layer of the onion further out. And then the margin is the furthest out. And if you hover over each of these sections, the browser will show you kind of where that space is getting taken up. And all of this is called the CSS box model. And I have linked to that information in our outline under CSS box model. So if you would like more information about that, you can pop that open and it will give you kind of a breakdown of how that space is working. Any questions on the box model? We will be using the box model a lot when you say, I would like this to be just over a little bit, right? So we do our padding, or I would like there to be space between these 2 elements, so we'll add a little margin. Or, oh, I would like a little space, but only on the left of this, so we'll use margin dash left.
My apologies, Max. I have one quick question.
Shoot.
Where we can see how you're you're typing the code as you type it. So I clicked on the link, but I'm not sure what to do next. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, not a problem. I don't think that link is working, that live share. So we're going to push that off for tonight and get that working tomorrow.
Okay. I just want to make sure.
Yep, no problem. Yeah, I tried it. It's always a pain to get set up, but once all of you guys are set up, it will be helpful for you to see the live code. But we're going to take time first thing tomorrow, before we even dive into stand up, and make sure everyone can make it into the live share on the code.
Okay.
But for now, we're just going to push that off until tomorrow night. Okay, so CSS. Starting to make a little sense to everyone? We see how we get to start to style things? Well, you may be looking at this and going, well, Max, now your code is so long, you have to scroll back and forth. It's hanging off the screen. Wouldn't it be nice if we could kind of keep that in a separate space? Well, in fact, we can. Remember this head section up here? That was for things we wanted to tell the browser, but we wanted to tell the browser without it actually rendering different content. So what we can do is we can come up here and we can add in a new style tag. And in that style tag, we can tell it, hey, we would like the background to be green. But we need to tell it what background we would like to be green. So that is called a CSS selector. And so when we use the CSS selector, the three most common kinds of selectors are element selectors, ID selectors, and class selectors. So I'm going to start with an element selector. I'm going to add a little, I'm going to add P here, which is saying, hey, go target all the P tags on the page. And for those, I am going to say my background color is going to be green. So I'm going to take that out of my inline styling. I'm going to save that, and I'm going to come over here and refresh. And notice now my first paragraph is green, but so is my second paragraph. Okay. Well, I targeted the P tag. But the problem is there are two P tags on my page. There is my first paragraph, and there is also my second paragraph. So what if I would like to target only one of those P tags? Well, what I can do is I can go to my P tag and add an ID onto that P tag. And in that P tag, I am going to say paragraph 1. Now, in order to use that selector, instead of saying P, I'm going to put a £sign in or a hashtag sign and say paragraph 1. Now, I'm using that hashtag here or £sign here because IDs are always that hashtag. And so because I've used ID here, I need to use the hashtag here. So when I save that and come back over here and refresh, you'll notice the green is off that second paragraph, but it's hanging on right here. I'm going to take a quick break and make sure everyone has their IDs working and can make sure that the selectors are working as well. So I'm going to leave this up and try and split it. And I can close out of that. And I'm going to kick off the poll to see where you guys are at. So the main goal here is that you've got your green background showing up, and it's showing up not because you have it in a style tag here, but because you've got it going on in a style tag up at the top. So if we change this to blue, and say if we want to make sure that blue is actually getting applied here. If it's staying green, check to make sure that you've removed the background from your style tag down here.
Is it possible for you to share that portion of the code inside of Slack?
Sure can.
Thank you.
I'm just sharing a snippet, so it doesn't have like the closing body tags and the closing HTML and all of that, but that should be a starting point. I've got 7 votes in, and I think we were at 10 or 11 before. So I'm just going to let people catch up, give you guys a couple minutes on that.
So my apologies, Max, just kind of double checking. In the body, I know we put the paragraph 1.
Yep.
Right on the line where it says ID equals paragraph 1. We're removing background, but we're keeping everything else.
Correct.
Okay. So do I just highlight it and press delete?
Yep.
Okay. All right, 1 second.
And Max, I haven't voted because I was behind, but I'm pretty comfortable with catching up though.
Cool, no problem.
And how do you get the actual colors to populate like next to the word? Because when I did it up towards the top with the paragraph one, the hashtag, it worked, but it's not working for me in the other ones.
Make sure that you've got semicolons after each one of your properties and values.
Okay.
That if you miss a semicolon here, you notice that yellow just disappeared from here. That's because I have a CSS property here, but I don't have a semicolon separating the margin from the border. So as soon as I put that semicolon back in, it's going to realize that border is a separate property and render out the yellow color for me.
I have a question.
Yep.
Up above, where you said back, hashtag paragraph and then background blue.
Yep.
I typed in blue, but it's not bringing up the little box with the color. How did you make that?
So make sure you've got your style tag and your closing style tag. Make sure you've got a hashtag here with no space after it, and then paragraph 1. Make sure you have your opening curly brace and your closing curly brace. And then background with a colon and then the word blue and a semicolon at the end. And if you think you've got all of that, let me know and we can share your screen.
Yeah, I have all that. I don't know what I'm doing.
Okay, go ahead and share your screen. Okay, you've got a space between paragraph and the number 1.
Oh, okay.
Simple as that.
Thank you.
No problem.
Max, do you mind if I share my screen for a moment?
Go for it.
Okay, thank you. Because having a little bit of a hard time here just with this one part. Okay, 1 second. All right, so let me just make this bigger.
Okay, so the first thing I notice is the colors in VS Code really are trying to help you out, right? So anything in blue, you notice those are highlighting your HTML tags for you, right?
Right.
But if you look, you see how the ID is in a lighter blue
Yes.
on line 12? I noticed
Yep.
that your style is not in a lighter blue. So look at
Okay.
where you've got your style and look at where you've got your closing arrow for the opening tag of the H1.
Okay.
Should the closing arrow for the H1 be here or should it be here?
Ah, okay. Okay, I see what you mean. So we have to remove that one.
Yep. And now, all of a sudden, not only did you get your red, but style is now in a lighter blue, and the value of the style is in red, just like it is down here.
Okay.
So just that simple little syntax, which I promise will get easier with time, that's what's doing it for you. So if you save and go check in your browser, I think you will
Right.
find it working the way you want.
And then just one other question. What about right here, the yellow? How do I?
Same thing. So should your closing tag be here for your opening or should it be here?
Oh, I didn't even see it there. Okay. Okay.
And then one other thing before I leave you, should style be a colon or should it be something else?
Oh, and equals.
Yep.
Okay.
And I think you'll find, yep, now
Got
your color highlighting is. So syntax highlighting, I've been using VS Code for years. I've been using code editors for years. If you ask me what color a CSS property should be in VS Code, I would be like, no idea, right? But the
Right.
second you share your screen, I go, color's not right. I don't know what color it's supposed to be, but I know that it's supposed to be a different color, right? So really the only thing that should be white text is content. And then you can look and say, all right, tags should be blue, properties or attributes on those tags should be a light blue, and then
Okay.
values of those tags should be that what do you call that? Orange-ish,
Yeah.
brownish. I guess that's more of a brown. But
Okay.
as you spend more time in your text editor, you'll be able to pick up on what syntax is incorrect based off of your color highlighting.
Okay.
Which is normally called syntax highlighting. But you should be good to go there.
Okay. Thank you.
No problem. Any other questions? Okay, so just a couple more things that I want to cover. It looks like we've got most of the poll results in, so thank you guys for that. And don't worry, the free code camp is going to give you practice space for working on each one of these concepts. So we are close to the end, guys, for tonight. Okay. Now, IDs are great, but what happens if I want to actually apply something to 2 p tags, but not a third one? Well, I'm going to come in here and add a third p tag and say my third paragraph. And I'm going to say that I would like the background color to be blue on this p tag and this p tag. Well, the problem is, and not on this one. The problem that we run into is IDs are, by their very nature, supposed to be unique, right? IDs are not supposed to be reused multiple times. So what we do instead is, instead of using an ID, we're going to use a class. And that class, instead of calling it paragraph 1, because this is going to be paragraph 3, let's call it blue paragraph instead. And I'm going to copy that class and also throw it on my p tag down here. But now we aren't going to use a hashtag because a hashtag is for our IDs. So what matches up with a class name selector is a period instead. So I'm going to add my blue paragraph here and save and come over here. And when I refresh, I've got my first paragraph going on, I've got my second paragraph, and I've got my third paragraph. Now that may be hard to read, so we can just start chaining our attributes here. We can say our color is going to be white, and refresh, and we get that. Now if we really wanted to get going, we could say, well, this margin top, the border, all of that, I would still like to apply to my first paragraph. So at this point, we can mix and match. We can say, hey, we want a class on that and an ID on that, and we're going to still call this paragraph 1. And down here, I'm going to use my hashtag as the selector because it's matching an ID. And I can take all of this information from the styling, and because it's all CSS, I can put that in there, add in my line break so it's a little bit more readable, take out my style tag down here, save, refresh, and that's all hanging on down there. So I don't want to use IDs in multiple places because IDs are supposed to be unique, but I can use classes in multiple places. And so by just adding that class to this p tag and this p tag, I'm able to style my first paragraph, my third paragraph, and not style my second paragraph as intended.
Okay, so in the style tag up at the top, where there's like a dot blue paragraph, so does it matter whether you use a dot or a hashtag?
Yes. So the dot is always going to match classes, and the hashtag is always going to match IDs.
Okay.
So if I made this, like if I took this ID out and made it paragraph 1 blue paragraph, it's going to lose that styling unless I did 2 things. I could make this a class instead by swapping out the period for the hashtag, at which point I get my styling back. Or I could put this back as an ID and keep that as a hashtag. And so the hashtag is meant to be for, hey, I would like this styling to apply to this one element and one element only. The classes are, hey, I would like this notion of a blue paragraph, and I'm going to use that blue paragraph in multiple places in my website. And so that's why the IDs and classes are, hey, do I want to be able to target this one specific thing, at which point I'll use an ID, Or, hey, am I creating a style that's going to be used in multiple places? At which point I'm going to use a class instead. So come over here, refresh, and I should have it working like that. Okay, there are 2 quick things I want to do, and then I promise we're going to take a break and let you guys go either work on this homework assignment and catch up to where I'm at which point I'll share all of that code in Slack. Or you guys are welcome to start on Free Code Camp, and as you're working through things, if you have questions, just jump in Zoom, share your screen, and ask the question. So that's how we're going to spend the last 30 minutes of class. But two quick elements that I wanted to cover with you guys. And then tomorrow I'll show you how we can move this style tag out into a separate file. 2 important elements that I forgot to cover in our body tag. The first is an A tag. That A tag stands for an anchor tag. And what we can do is we can say link to Google here. And if I come over here and refresh, you'll see my link to Google is here. But it's not showing up as a link yet. And that's because we didn't tell it where that link is going to go. So if we come over here and add the attribute href, and the value of that href is going to be google.com, when I save that, come over here and refresh, you notice that turned blue. And if we click on that, it's going to take me right to Google. So that's an important A tag. The other one I want to show you is images. So I'm going to go to unsplash.com and I'm going to just pull in this image, right? So if I right click on this, I can copy the image address, and I'm going to come down here right under my H tag. I'm going to add an image with an src tag. That src stands for source. Paste that in and close out my image tag. So if I come over here, I refresh, I've got my image coming in, and we can even get fancy and use our CSS. So I can say, I'm going to add an ID on this called my only image, and come up to hashtag, because I'm using an ID, my only image. And I'm going to say I would like the width to be 300 pixels. So if I come over here and refresh, now my image is appropriately sized. And the last thing I can do is, if I want to get fancy, I can wrap my tag. So I can say, hey, ahref is going to take me to this page in Unsplash. So I can put my tag in there, and then I'm going to take my closing A tag and move it to the end of the image and make sure my indentation is right. And so now when I'm on my page and I refresh, if I click on this button or this image, it's going to take me to Unsplash so I can see the image and all the details on it and when it was published and all of that. So that's just a quick example of we can nest our tags and have images inside of our A tag, and that's what's going to make it so when you click on the image, the image loads in. Okay, I am done with new concepts. We are going to touch tomorrow a little bit on how we can move our CSS file outside of our HTML and still use all the same selectors. Your homework assignment is to turn in something that looks like the index that we created today. So it has some images in it, maybe has a link in it. Doesn't have to be pretty, but hopefully it's got some CSS in it. Use your CSS selectors. Just create something that looks like an ugly page and submit that in. That is homework assignment A10. A11, 12, and 13 are all free code camp. They should all be either a refresh of what we've covered tonight or adding on top of those concepts. Those are not due until the end of the week. Feel free to chip away at them or go full bore and just get them all done all at once. Whatever is completely fine. So for the last 20 minutes, oh yeah, Nicole, great question. Unsplash is a great resource for uncopyrighted images. Because we publish these classes to YouTube, I have to be super careful about not using copyrighted works in the video. If you would like to use Google Images, you can, because it's a homework assignment, it's not getting published anywhere. But Unsplash is just a quick place that I can go to get uncopyrighted images. So if you would like to use an image published elsewhere on the web, you're welcome to do that in your own assignment. So this should just be getting your feet wet. Do not worry. This is a ton of course content that we've covered tonight. So using Free Code Camp to reinforce these concepts. Assignment 10 is also not due until the end of the week. It's not due until Sunday, but you will be amazed. Tomorrow we will start work on external style sheets, pulling in a framework called Bootstrap, and starting to use Bootstrap's grid and elements tomorrow. So everything picks up speed from here. So if you feel like you're falling behind, if you feel like you're not getting a concept, that is the perfect time to go in Slack and be like, Max, I'm at hour 2 of the video and 2 hours and 15 minutes into it, and you did this thing and I don't get it. Hit me up in Slack and I will go to that part of the video and be like, oh my God, I can't believe I explained it that poorly. This is what I was trying to say. Or say, I'm trying to use a P tag. This P tag isn't working. Just copy and paste the whole code to me in Slack, and I'll review your code and say, hey, you got a space here. That space isn't supposed to be there. But as we keep going, we're going to be starting to build more and more projects, and you will become naturally more and more comfortable as you get more experienced. And that is completely normal and completely fine. So the next 30 minutes, I encourage you guys to stick around in Zoom. If you're one of those people who's going to get distracted super easily if someone has a question, feel free to pop out of Zoom and pop back in when you have a question. But I would encourage you guys to work on the assignment from class tonight. I'm going to share my code in that live stream channel, and just delete out this last one. So you got an example of everything we've covered tonight. And I will post that in just a second. Try not to copy and paste anything, only because doing that debugging, figuring out why that something isn't working, is going to be a super important skill for you guys to build up with your experience. But I'm going to share that in 1 second. I will be around for the next 25 minutes if anyone has questions. But feel free to start on either A10 or A11 and just start working through Free Code Camp or the file exercise that we had in class tonight.
Quick question, Max.
Shoot.
For the file exercise we worked on tonight, for the image, are we using the exact like URL for the image that you were using, or can we just go and just pick one, or
go and pick your own?
Okay.
And then when you pull up the image in Unsplash, if you right click on the image itself, it should say copy image address. And that address is what you want to paste into the source tag in the image.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
And someone did have a question during break, which I wanted to touch on. If you don't have applications over here in your sidebar, I'm going to actually remove it from my sidebar so it doesn't show up. The way you can get to it is if you go up at the top and drop down to applications, that should open your applications folder for you. And I believe if you hover over this and grab the little icon, you can drag it over here and drop it into your sidebar, and then you'll have access to applications in your Finder. I think by default it shows up there. It may not. And again, I'll just do that one more time. You go up at the top, drop down to applications. And then if you hover over applications, you're going to get the little A folder icon. And I'm just going to drag that right into my dock, and it should show up there. Okay. That's all I got. That is
I have a question.
Sure, go ahead.
I have one too, but go ahead.
Oh, my question is quick. How long will it take for this video to be up on YouTube?
I'm going to stop the recording now so it can start processing. I'm hoping that it will be up by, let's say, 9:30.
Okay, thank you.
Max, is there an extension that that when you save your index HTML file that automatically refreshes it in the browser?
There is. It is called Live Share, and I believe that's what Chaz was asking about. I will show you how to use that tomorrow as part of getting the Live Share and Live Server are two things that I will get set up tomorrow for you guys.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Quickly pulling up my notes to have that. Any other questions before you guys scatter and start working on homework?
This is probably very random, but how do you right click on a Mac?
Great question. If you hold in Control and do a regular click, it should pull up the right click menu for you. The other thing I would encourage you to turn on is if you go to System Preferences and Trackpad, under... Oh, I guess maybe is it on by default? If you use two fingers instead of one on your trackpad and click, that should also pull up the right click menu.
Ah, okay. Thank you.
And two fingers up and down is also your scroll. So you don't always have to be going over to the scroll. Two fingers up and down or left to right will scroll you up and down or horizontally. And then a two-finger click should be a right click.
I learned that the hard way.
I didn't even know that. That's crazy.
Yeah, there's a lot on a Mac that takes a little while to get used to. So if you guys have those questions or you're like, how is he doing that so quickly? Whenever I have my laptop open, I've got my mouse here and I'm not even using it. I'm just using my trackpad. So if you guys ever have questions while I'm screen sharing, always feel free to jump in and ask. All right, that's all I got for you guys. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Give me 1 minute. I'm going to paste in the code right into the live stream channel so you guys can reference that. The outline for tonight's class should be published and should have a lot of those things in there. I just want to take notes, get VS Code, live share, set up, and cover live server in VS Code. Is there anything else I promised yesterday that I think that was it.
Right. Thursday.
What was that, Christy?
I thought you said, was there anything you promised yesterday?
Oh, I'm sorry. Is there anything that I promised for tomorrow? My brain is as fried as your guys.
I don't remember. Can I have the TA in the breakout room to ask a question?
Sure can. Caitlin, can you manage that?
Yep, I should be able to. I'm still co-host, right?
Yes. I'm going to stop my screen share. You guys can start work on assignments, and then if you have questions, just pop back in here and fire them off.
Hold on a second.
Okay.
That was you, Christy? Who was that? Okay,
Me.
I just want to make sure. Sorry.
Being abducted into another room without consent.
Yes, I want to make sure I have permission.
Okay.
Okay, ready?
Feel free to turn off your cameras and start work on assignments, and then just pop in here and unmute if you have any questions.